Well, welcome back to Bob's Tech Lab. If you're a subscriber, please thank you for your support. And if you're new here, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to focus on audio. But before we do that, I wanted to give you some tips. The first tip, and the most important thing you can do, is either go down here to the gearbox as I just did and bring up your project settings, or I believe you go to File, Project, Settings. You need to do it straight away. As soon as you open up a project and you get that first screen, go to the Settings Manager and set this. Now, what have I got it set at? Well, I've got it full screen 1080. I like 24 frames per second, but once you set this project settings, that's what your project will render at. So it's important you do that straight away. Now, speaking of time, let's say you had a clip that's about 60 frames per second or close to it. Well, our project setting is set for 24. So what I'm going to do is click on that item and I'm going to change it to 40%. So 40% of 60 frames per second is 24 frames per second. So when you play that back at 24 frames per second, because that's your project, that clip that was filmed at 60 frames per second is going to play correctly and show you slow motion. Let's say I wanted to change this. Let's go to where it says timeline, and down here it says output blanking. I could go in there and make this 2.39. 2.39 is kind of a standard letterbox, and you can see it cut off the top and the bottom, but now it gives it more cinematic look. No harm done. I'm just going to go back over here and go to reset, and now it's back to normal. But some of you wanted to know how to do letterbox. It's that simple. For my next tip, let's talk about timelines. And this is a very good example. Right now, the timeline that you see up here is what I'm about to work on, which is a voice recording done with the Shure SM48 dynamic microphone. I have some video and stills here, and I'm going to add that audio to this clip to create my presentation. Now, what I'm actually doing is a microphone shootout. So I'm going to compare two microphones. So consequently, I added my original timeline was called MX990. That one's all completed. So I thought it would be best that you have a timeline that contains all of that. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this other timeline of this other microphone audio, and I'm going to do that. So then I created a third timeline that's going to put all this together. Now I want you to notice something about the timeline. Yes, it's called Final. There's an intro here. What this represents, all I had to do is go to the timeline called MXL990 and drag it down here. Okay, I can take this timeline. Okay, it's not a clip, it's a timeline, but I'm going to add it to this timeline, and it does so. What's missing? All the cuts. So by having separate timelines for each microphone that I'm using, I don't get anything mixed up. Okay, so that's how I'm planning on doing this project. The follow-up question comes up, well, what if I wanted to go back to the original timeline and just for whatever reason I had somebody else that I want them to work on this. I'd like them to work on this timeline, but I want to do it on a copy. So I have the original. You follow? You're in the timeline that you want to copy. You click anywhere in the timeline. Now you notice something subtle happened. There's a red line here that tells us that this timeline is selected. Then you go to Edit, Duplicate Timeline. That's simple. You do that, boom, you'll have that done. Now at the end of your project, you're going to want to render this. Let's go now to Deliver. You have two simple options. The easiest thing to do, click on YouTube, give it a name, give it a location, Bob's your uncle. You're done. I prefer to control the process. So I have a custom 1080. All I've got to do now is take this to 24 because remember that's the setting for this project. The format is MP4. The codec is H.264. There's an audio setting. It's just AAC. That works best for me. 192, that works best. I could change this to 24. I'm going to leave it alone. I could go to File and give it a file name. In fact, I probably should do that now. This is going to be Mic Test. Go back to Video. See, there it is now. And I just got to tell it where to go. Okay, well, for Windows, we'll do the desktop. It just seems easier that way. It's not going to do anything. It's just setting up the deliver. All I have to do is click Render to Queue, which queues it up. Then I hit Start Render, and it will start doing that process. So that's how I do my exports into YouTube. Again, I prefer to use custom. Then once I know that worked, I simply went over here and right-clicked it and created a preset, and I called it 1080 MP4. Okay, well, that's it. It's just a few tips. Hopefully that's going to help you. Thank you for watching.